Hello everyone, welcome back. Today I want to share an interesting part of history I discovered while reading The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. It's about the relatively recent invention of race and how it was used to justify brutal systems in early America, chattel slavery, and the extermination of native people. Though we talk about race all the time now, it's actually a relatively modern concept. It rose to prominence in the last few centuries, mostly thanks to European imperialism. Specifically, in America, race as we know it today was crafted to reconcile two things, which is forced labor of Africans and the extermination of Native Americans. All of this needed some kind of moral cover. After all, the new colonies were preaching freedom while simultaneously practicing forms of terror and dehumanization. In the early colonial days, when settlements were small, indentured servitude was the main way to secure cheap labor. This system bound both white and black laborers under harsh conditions for a set period of time. They often shared the same frustrations and fought a common enemy, which was wealthy planters who controlled both the land and the legal system, creating a social order that legitimized terror against both black and white bondservants. In fact, not all black people in the colonies were initially enslaved. Many were treated as indentured servants, just like their white counterparts. However, as plantation farming boomed, especially for tobacco and cotton, the demand for labor and land skyrocketed. To satisfy the hunger for more land, settlers invaded larger territories, clashing with Native American tribes. As resistance from native peoples intensified, colonial propaganda ramped up negative portrayals of savages. By painting native people as an inferior European settlers, found moral or immoral justification for annihilating them. American Indians, it turned out, were difficult to enslave on a massive scale. They could and did fight back. European immigrants were also poor candidates for slavery because they were in limited supply, and enslaving Europeans would have discouraged further immigration. So planters turned to Africans, who they believed were relatively powerless. Enslaving Africans and condemning their children to the same fate soon became the foundation of the Southern economy. This shift was hastened by events like Bacon's Rebellion, a revolt that deeply frightened the colonial elite. In 1675, Nathaniel Bacon, a white property owner, rallied poor whites, indentured servants, and enslaved black people against the wealthy planter class. They shared more in common than you might imagine, crushing poverty, limited freedom, and near impossible living conditions. They revolted, demanding an end to their oppression. Although the rebellion was eventually quashed, participants were hanged and promises of amnesty were broken, the idea of a multiracial alliance threatened the established order in a big way. Word spread, and a handful of similar uprisings followed. Terrified of these potential alliances, the planter elite switched up their tactics. They moved away from indentured servants toward the mass importation of enslaved Africans, often directly from Africa, limiting their familiarity with European culture or language. What Michelle Alexander calls the racial bribe included letting poor whites police black slaves, granting them access to Native American lands, and creating laws to ensure free laborers wouldn't have to compete directly with slaves. By handing out small benefits, like slightly better legal status or the ability to supervise slave patrols, poor whites gained an interest in preserving slavery. Even if they remained impoverished, at least they weren't enslaved. By the mid-1770s, bond labor had evolved into a full-on racial caste system rooted in slavery. Africans, like Native Americans, were dismissed as less civilized and lesser human beings, justifying their enslavement. This happened even as white colonists were crafting a new nation supposedly founded on liberty, equality, and justice for all. I invite you to reflect on these issues and share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and like always, stay curious and keep questioning.